Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today I have the most disappointing books that I read in 2021. I didn't really feel the need to keep a number limit on these. These are just truly all the books that disappointed me. I mainly read books that I really enjoyed. My average rating was a 4.23, which is ridiculous. So on this list, I have 13 books that disappointed me, and I thought that was an appropriate number. These are not in any particular order, just because I disliked them for various reasons. It's hard to compare. Let me give a disclaimer before I get into this list, because I do have a lot of strong feelings about some of these books. If you enjoyed any of these books, I am so happy. I am so glad that you enjoyed them. Please do not take my thoughts personally. They are just my thoughts. They don't matter to you. Don't let them affect you. This is just me doing a little ranting and raving about my feelings on some of these books. This is purely for fun, purely for your entertainment. If you like these books, no hard feelings from me. I am truly so happy for you. The first book I'll talk about is The X-Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I really wanted to like this, and I thought the podcasting radio show aspect of this was fun. Like, I enjoyed reading the transcripts. This follows two radio, they're not radio hosts. One is like, he does reporter type stories, and then one is like a producer. Their radio station is in trouble, and they need something to get listeners' attention. So they start this show where they pretend to be exes and talk about relationship type stuff, and then they develop an attraction from there. But I just didn't really like either one of these characters. The female main character, she was a little bit older than our male character in here, which was fun, but I remember feeling annoyed at her and like what she wanted other people to do, and the relationship she had with her friend was not very good in here. And then the guy, just nothing really stood out to him except he kept talking about how he had a master's degree. And I hope that was supposed to be funny, because I just thought that was funny in here, but it made him a little bit annoying, and it just wasn't my favorite romance. And then maybe a little more controversially, I did not like The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I kind of felt like it was slow. So this is a Greek retelling of Achilles and Patroclus. Sorry if I say any of these names wrong. But this is a Greek retelling of their love, their relationship, and I just felt like it was really long. I felt like for the time we spent developing their relationship, I should have felt more about it, but really I was just super annoyed at Achilles because he's like a selfish prick. And then I just felt like it got really unnecessarily sad at the end, but that could totally just be like the story and how it's supposed to go. I just didn't have the best time listening to this. I listened to the audio. If I would have read this, I don't know if I would have finished it. But it was not my favorite story. And then I read Circe, I think right after it, and I was just like blown away by how good that one was, but I did not love The Song of Achilles. And then I also did not love American Royals by Catherine McGee, and I thought the premise of this was so fun. This is a young adult drama, and the premise of this is that George Washington's family became a monarchy instead of a presidency. So it's the Washington family still. I just was not interested in the drama in here. There are like 4 or 5 different characters. We're following Beatrice. I'm assuming this is Beatrice, who is the first daughter, and her family is the first family to do like a queen. So she is being groomed to become the monarch. She will be the queen of America. But she's in love with her bodyguard, and that should be a lot more fun than it was in here. Beatrice was just really annoying to me. And then she has twin siblings, a boy and a girl, and they're not fun. Everyone is just, I just didn't like reading from anyone. Everyone was unlikable, and not unlikable in a fun way. And I just didn't really care to continue on with this series. And then I also didn't really like The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, which I didn't like The Silent Patient either. I think I put it on my most disappointing video last year, which I'll link below if you're interested in that. But Alex Michaelides' characters, I feel like they're all the same. I feel like no one really has any special personality traits. So I guess you could say they're plot heavy, but also I just feel like the plots are kind of, everything just feels really low energy to me. And maybe some people like that in thrillers, like just kind of dry, kind of to the point of the story. But I want to feel more in my books. And this is a dark academia type thriller, and people on the campus of Cambridge, some students are being murdered. And this woman who has a niece on this campus, and she's also a psychotherapist, which I believe is what Alex Michaelides is, and is what the main character in his Silent Patient book was. So that's just his background. But she comes and is trying to help, but I don't know. It was just not for me. It was not a thriller for me. I will still read what Alex Michaelides comes out with just because I feel like they're super popular, but his writing for some reason just does not do it for me. And then another thriller, maybe this will be on a few people's disappointing list, but this is Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams, and it's so sad because I loved No Exit so much. And this story is following a twin, and her sister committed suicide, but she doesn't think it was suicide, and she thinks there's this crooked cop involved, and she is meeting with him to ask him some questions about her sister because they had been kind of estranged for the last year. And then they have a standoff for the whole book, literally just pointing a gun at each other, having a standoff. And we have some flashbacks that aren't really flashbacks, but are really just what our main character thinks happened. And then they're just kind of getting proven wrong. And then she's also writing a blog at the same time that this is happening. The timelines just did not mesh for me. Having different viewpoints, but also all of them kind of coming from our main character, it just was messy to me, and I didn't care about the story. Like I said, they just point guns at each other on this bridge for the entire book with a few flashbacks that are actually just confusing. Another book I didn't love was Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This setup sounds so amazing. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling, but it's just so contemporary that I did not love it. The society is like really weird. I'm pretty sure it's basically like in America, but its own thing in America, and it's this society where some Greek god figures are elected, but some, like Zeus, are more monarchical, like hereditary. They just inherit the position. So Persephone is Demeter's daughter, and Demeter like ran for this position, and then her children became Persephone and what the other sisters, I don't know. And then Demeter, this woman who is Demeter, arranged for Persephone to marry Zeus, and Zeus apparently murders his wives, so she runs away and she runs to the underworld, and then she is trying to make herself undesirable to Zeus, so she has a thing with Hades. And their thing was fine. Their relationship was a fun time. And Jessica from Peace Love Books was talking about this, and she was talking about how you wanted to feel more urgency with this story, but then they're just kind of like hanging out, and she's like, I guess I should do something about my situation, but I just want to adopt a puppy. And I don't know, the plot was not for me. The relationship was fine, but also this audiobook was not good. So you have both perspectives from Hades and Persephone. So there are two narrators in the audiobook. There's a male narrator and a female narrator. So like when the female narrator was reading, but then Hades would have a line, her voice she used for the male character was horrendous. It was so bad. And then vice versa, when the male narrator was reading and then Persephone had a line, or a female character had a line, it was so comically like high-pitched and feminine in this male voice that it just pulled me out of the story. So I just didn't have a good time with my experience with this book. Back to the thrillers, I have Survived the Night by Riley Sager. So the setup of this book is that there has been a murder on this campus, and it's a serial killer. They call him the campus killer, which is super original. So they call him the campus killer, and then our main character, her roommate, gets murdered, and she is understandably distraught. And it's like 3 days before the semester is supposed to end, but she wants to leave. She's like, I can't finish it. I've got to go home right now. And her boyfriend's like, hey, if you wait 3 days, I'll take you home. And she's like, nope, unacceptable. I must leave now. So she posts this is set in the 1990s. So she posts on this bulletin board, like looking for a ride, because that's what you would do. You would look for a ride with a stranger when there's a serial killer on your campus. So she gets a ride with this stranger who is going towards her home. So that was super just dumb and unrealistic. And then to add to the unrealism of this, she has this condition, and I've learned this year that this is not a plot device that I like in books. She has this condition where she sees movies in her head. So she will have this experience and then realize that that experience never happened. So as you can imagine, that really lends some unreliability to our narrator and her situation. And maybe the story was fine, but I was just so hung up on how I couldn't believe what was happening that I did not enjoy this book. And then I have The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. This is the first book I ever gave 1 star in my life. This book was absolutely, completely ridiculous. The plot, so it's historical. It's probably like Victorian, like late 1800s England. And we have these ladies who are in this society, and they are pirates, but the ships that they sail are actually houses that they fly, and they're not even good at it. I think it's supposed to be like super comical, and everyone in this book is just so incompetent. And our love interest that is supposed to be our love interest did not like him at all. He was like, what's the word? A little misogynistic. Like, I don't know. So like in this time period, you kind of run into that because everyone's roles were just a lot more gender specific and not lenient at all. But then usually your male love interest is different. Like he can think a little bit differently. This guy could not, even though these women are pirates. And then our pirate lady girl that we're following, she's like 19, but she's a pirate, and she is so socially and emotionally inexperienced. Like there is one, I'll call it a steamy scene, but honestly this book was so ridiculous I couldn't take any of it seriously. There was a steamy scene and she had no idea what was happening. She had no idea what to expect, and the guy wasn't even like very amazing about it. It was just, this was just a really bad book. Okay, it was just really, really bad. And then I have Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. Let me tell you, so there weren't too many books. Like the percentage of these books out of the 130 some that I read is small, but I feel very strongly about all these. Anyway, Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. I did not like this book at all. Let me compose myself. So what I did not like about this book were the characters. They were so selfish, did not take any other people into consideration, and they were big martyrs. So there are 2 sisters, and someone in their family passes away, and then they have never had a good relationship with their mom. She has been just very cold, never really showed them a lot of affection as children. Well, now these sisters are like in their 40s, so their mom is like, she's in her set, like she's an old woman, okay? And this story is these sisters finding out why their mom was so cold to them. So this isn't truly a spoiler because you can see this coming. So their mom is Russian, and she had some traumatic experiences during World War II in Russia. Fair, you know? And they just never knew that. They couldn't put it together in their head. Hey, my mom is from Russia, and my dad said she's had a hard time. Well, mom grew up in Russia during World War II. She probably didn't have a good time because it was awful over there, right? Like, you know, there was a siege, they starved, they were refugees, like, you know, maybe my mom had some issues. They just never knew that. All they cared about were themselves. Like, I get it when they were younger. Like, if you're a 10-year-old, you're not really thinking that far, but these are like 40-year-old women now. And all they did was feel bad for themselves and their childhood experiences, and they were just mad at each other because one of the sisters like travels a lot and the other sister has stayed home to like run the family business. So there's a lot of resentment there. There's just a lot of resentment in this book. I did like when their mom finally started telling her story and we were like in Russia. and war things are happening. So the historical aspect of it, I did enjoy. Okay, it hurts me to say that, but like I did enjoy that. But I hated the characters so much. They were just so selfish. And the plot, again, was just so unrealistic. And I couldn't believe that their dad never told them that. Like, and he's like this very doting father, like loved his daughters. And he watched them be emotionally traumatized by the lack of affection from their mom and was never like, oh, girls, your mom's had a hard time and she just has trouble with her emotions from her PTSD from the war, basically. So I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe this book as I was reading it. It was really painful to me, and it was my first Kristen Hanna book, so there you go. And then I also didn't like Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. A lot of people love this book and say it's their favorite book of hers that they've read. I think I really had a lot of trouble getting past the scenes in the beginning of the book where you are reading from the perspective of this child who is being held captive in a basement. And it's just really disturbing. And then when we get to the end, and I won't spoil anything, but it didn't pay off. My reading of it did not pay off in the ending, in how the ending ended. But the setup of this is there's two different timelines, and some women went missing like 10 years ago, and one of them was never found. She was a 6-year-old girl, and now she's back in the present day timeline, so we're finding out more about it in the present day. And like I said, I will not spoil it for you. I won't say anything else, but I just didn't like this, and I didn't think when we finally found out what was happening that it was worth it for what I read. But like I said, a lot of people love this. Oh my gosh, and there was some, it just kind of hit me. There was a scene in here, like a pelvic exam, and it was really horrible. And I just thought this book made me experience a lot of things that I didn't want to, and there was no payoff for it. That's how I'm going to put it. And then another disappointing book was The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I did not like this book. This is fake dating. Our characters work together at this engineering firm. Like, they are both team leaders. They're smart, successful people. And our female character, her sister, is getting married. And God forbid she doesn't have a date to the wedding. And her family she knows they won't let her hear the end of it if she shows up to her sister's wedding without a date. Her, a successful adult engineer woman who is making her way in New York City, has to have a date for this wedding. To be fair, her sister is marrying the brother of her ex, and they had a really bad breakup, and it had a lot of like repercussions for her. So like, fair, fine, okay. Her co-worker, who they don't like each other, like there's a lot of tension between them. She overheard him say something and she just hasn't let it go, aka miscommunication. But he just like immediately volunteers. He's like, I'll be your date to this wedding. And she's like, no, you won't. And he's like, yeah, I will. And they agree to do it. And it's just such a slow burn. This is a long book. This is almost 500 pages. This is a long book, and their relationship takes so long to develop. And there is a scene in the mid-beginning where she is his fake date to something, and it was just so unnecessary. That was probably like 100 pages of her being his fake date to this event, and it was just so unnecessary. And then there was just so much back and forth of, will he actually go to the wedding with her? They just needed to go to the wedding. They needed to skip the whole first part of this book and just go to the wedding, and then it would have been more enjoyable probably. But I just hated that she, this smart woman, saw the biggest value of her being who she brought to this wedding. And her family, the only value they saw to her was if she brought a date to this wedding. And I just couldn't get over it. I did not like that aspect at all. And then she was also trying to diet, but not really diet. She was just trying to not eat anything before the wedding, because that's just like a wedding stereotype, right? Or like an event stereotype where you're supposed to look really thin and whatever. So she was having some like negative health effects from her not eating. And then Aaron, our guy, was just like, why aren't you eating? You should eat. And she was like, oh, I should eat. I'm like, I just can't with you. Like, do you even have a personality? Do you have any backbone at all? Like, do you have your own thoughts? I don't know, because I haven't seen them. Those are my strong feelings about this book. But a lot of people loved it. This won a Goodreads award. It was the debut novel of the year, so there's that. I didn't like it, so there's that too. And then I read Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan, and this was another book that I had a hard time reading this. So the setup of this is a very painful relationship, triangle type thing, and our heroine is dating this college ball player, okay, basketball player. He's an NBA draft pick. He's going to go to the NBA. We start out, they're in their senior year of college. Well, she runs in to his rival player, and they are playing in the NCAA championship against each other. And they just immediately hit it off, like they should be together. You know it. They do have good chemistry. There's great chemistry in this book between them. But then a lot of stuff happens. And when I say a lot of stuff, I mean 5 years of stuff, of trauma, of baggage happens that keeps them apart and keeps her with her current guy. And a lot of it was hard to read. Like, it was hard to read. I skimmed a lot of this book. But, like, I get it. If you like the drama, if you like the people who should be together but they are just forced apart, if you like that pain in a book, you'll probably like this. But I did really like the part in this where she just kind of, like, pieces out of her life and goes to live with her grandma for a little bit. I liked that part. Okay, and then I did like the ending of this book because this is another really long book. It was like 400 some pages. And I did get invested, even though I did have to skim some of it to get through it because it was simply a topic and scenes that I did not want to read. But I did get invested, and I was ready for the payoff at the end when they finally get together, as you know they do in these books. But this read just was not worth it for me. And the last book I will quickly talk about, I have been chatting. This video is going to be a lot longer than my favorites video that I just filmed. The last book I'll talk about is Starry by Debbie McComber. I hesitated putting this on here because I read this as a holiday read. But listen, I didn't like this book. I gave this book 1 star also. I only gave 2 books 1 star this year. This is one of them. This is like a 250 page, it's supposed to be like a holiday Christmas romance, and this one's just so ridiculous. And what I've learned, I've read 2 Debbie McComber books this year. Her female characters are just really entitled. Like, I do not like their attitudes. I do not like their personalities. They just expect things to happen and be given to them. So let me tell you what this book is about. Our heroine is a reporter, but she gets just these like light, fluffy society pieces. Like, she goes to art events and talks about who's at the art events. She gets these little fluffy pieces, but she wants to write bigger stories, as our reporters do in these books. And her boss is like, well, okay, I'll give you more interesting stories if you can locate and interview this famous author who has never been seen, located, or interviewed by anyone ever. If you do that, then I will let you write bigger, more meaningful pieces for our paper. And she's like, okay, I'll do it. Well, she does it. So she locates him she talks to his mom first, and she's like, oh, another reporter, I don't want to talk to you. And she's like, but ma'am, I only write for the society pages, and this is my one opportunity to write more meaningful stories for my newspaper. And then his mom's like, oh, poor darling, let me tell you where my son is. And I'm just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. So unbelievable. So ridiculous. So she finds him, and then they get snowed in together in Alaska for like a day. And he's supposed to be this real grumpy guy. And she's just like telling him things that he should do. She's just like, oh, why do you do this? You should actually do this. And for some reason that makes him fall in love with her. And then they keep up a correspondence when she has to go back to Chicago where she lives. Then some other things I just really didn't like about this. She had already arranged to go on a date with someone. So they're, talking to each other. This is my like emailing motion. Also, her email was like, girlygirl22@chicago.com, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I'm sure his email was like alaskaman@alaska.com or something. It was just so ridiculous. It was hard for me. It was really hard for me. But they're having their correspondence, and she's like, oh, hey, I have this date I have to go on. Like, we can't talk on the phone tonight. Sorry. And he is like, you have a date? So he flies to Alaska because he has decided to be jealous about this date that she's like, oh yeah, I just have to go on it because I already said that I would. So he shows up to make her feel guilty about going on this date And then when he shows up, she's like, ooh, my man's so fine. I don't know if I want him here. All my friends are gonna want him, and that makes me jealous. And I was like, who are you people? Like, are you real people? Are you adults? Because I don't think so. Are you fictional characters? Because that's what I think. Anyway, I didn't like this. And it wasn't even that Christmassy. Like, the only Christmassy scene, he like does a little bit of groveling. At the end, it's on Christmas Day. And that's it. That's it. That's all. But I didn't like this book. Didn't like it at all. At first, I was like ready to experience it at a surface level. But then my emotions just got a little bit visceral when I was spending time with these characters. And I did not like this book. So that's the last book I'll talk about. I had a lot of feelings. This was good. This was good to get my feelings out there about these books. Let me know what your most disappointing read was this year. Please let me know. Leave it down below. If you liked any of these books, I am so happy for you. I'm so glad you enjoyed them. This is just my opinion, like I said, but give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one.